I am Christie Federico. I am a women's empowerment coach, and I help women discover who they are beyond their conditioning, and I help them gain the confidence to express themselves fully in the world, in their relationships, in the bedroom, and all of life.
Yes, I'm really excited because one of the things that really intrigued me is your Instagram and TikToks, especially because you do a lot of support with the bedroom part.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really expect it, and then they see my social media and they're like, "Oh, okay, that's what you do."
Fun though. Can you talk a little bit about, well, one, what you do as a women's empowerment coach? Because I really don't want it to be so like sex based or that get anybody in the right or the wrong mindset of what you do as well. But I would also love to hear about why that's also an important part of your work as well.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, and I appreciate your understanding that it's like way more about sex, because a lot of people don't really get it. It's like people think that's what they need or like want, or like the technical help, but really it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah.
um so I mentioned earlier that I help people kind of like unlearn and remove their conditioning, because over time, from a very young age, we are conditioned to act and look and be a certain way in the world, um, especially when it comes to a certain gender.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I really help women uncover and learn who they are at their core, and how they truly are meant to be in the world when it comes to their
Mm.
sexuality, when it comes to their passions, what makes them feel alive. um, and it's really just a process of self-discovery and helping guiding them there, and helping them learn how to use their voice in the ways that they need to and want to, and sometimes it's even figuring out what they want with their life or in their relationships and all of that. So I meet my clients where they're at. Everyone's on such a different journey and are different parts of their journey,
Yeah, I
so
would imagine.
that's it in
Awesome.
a nutshell.
So, how did you fall in line with your own discovery then to really want to use your gifts to help other women as well?
There were a lot of different things that made me realize, like, okay, I can't not do this, or at least not
Mm.
incorporate it in my work. From a kid, I was always interested in intimacy. Like, I remember, I daydreamed a lot. I read like trashy, like Cosmo and 17 as a young adult, and they were just
OMG.
like brainwashing me into, you know, doing the things, like learning things that I now help people unlearn. But at the time,
Hmm.
it was fascinating. And
Oh, completely.
um,
And when
then
you're only getting it from like seeing it from one source, I think when we were growing up, at least at my age, it was like those were kind of the only things that we're talking about in a way to get advice or to hear things or what's working, you know?
yeah, yeah, it was like, because it was so taboo, at least we had these like sources where we can get like
Yeah.
snippets of information,
Yeah,
kind of
completely.
like understood in a way. Um, but yeah, so it wasn't until, I guess, later on, when I was training to be a therapist, that I took a human sexuality course. And
Mm.
just that really changed things for me. I was like, holy crap, this is so fascinating. I get to learn in a legit class about like kinks and fetish and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
It just really like normalized it for me, and also just realized, it made me realize that this is like really an area of interest. And then in that program, as well as an intern, I did some couples counseling and individual counseling, helping people around their relationships and sex life. And I was like, wow, like people are trusting me with their deepest, darkest secrets and
Yeah, yeah.
and that was such an honor, and really sparked my curiosity even more. So I kind of kept this information in my back pocket, like, okay, these interest me. I don't know how I want to use them moving forward yet, but maybe I can be a couples counselor or something.
Yeah.
And then it was around that time too that I discovered some people doing work that inspired me, such as Esther Perel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she's a
No.
therapist. She's studied a lot of different cultures and relationships, and she's big with like modern monogamy and modern relationships and stuff. And a lot around sexuality as well. So all of this definitely inspired me. There was definitely a fire in me as well, as I realized how small I was kept as a woman and as a girl growing up, and just realizing how, so many girls and women are kept small, and there's
Mm.
like their expression is stifled. And so that fire is kind of always within me, inspiring my work and desire to help women.
Do you
Um,
mind sharing what you mean by kept small? Because I mean, I think I have an idea, but for anybody who's like, what does she mean?
yeah, of course, I'd be happy to share. So, um, I was even sometimes overtly told like what I should wear and what I shouldn't, how I should smell and look as a girl, like
Mm,
things. I was, there's some conditioning for me around like not being able to laugh when I wanted to.
mm,
And, so that was like my natural joy, like being shut down, and that as a young person really affects like how we move forward in the world, and how we feel like we can't have that joy, or we can't really express, whether it's through appearance or through our words or relationships, like how we want to and naturally are meant to.
mm-hmm,
Those
mm-hmm.
are some examples.
Yeah, I think of even for me, like not identifying as a woman, but like as a kid, like the kind of in my family, it was like kids are meant to be like seen but not heard. Like you're just kind of like do as you're told and like move on, you know? And so just thank you for sharing that because I do think that there, like even in just society, we've seen how we put certain genders or certain identities in certain boxes and how they should behave or look, like you said, smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and there were a couple of other things too. Just like my realizations about myself, that there were certain parts of sexuality and like taboo topics that I was always naturally comfortable talking about.
Mm.
And that was like poop and sex, like especially for women. Like, God forbid, like we talk about these things or like are comfortable talking about them, but
Yeah, yeah.
I realized that I was comfortable and like a lot of people, especially women, aren't. And that was like, again, information for me, and like fueled a desire to like help more women like be free and just like
Yeah.
there. Um, and then another pivotal thing I think was that I was able to masturbate at a young age. And that I think allowed me to feel more comfortable in my sexuality than a lot
Mm,
of people, because especially women, so many women haven't masturbated, or they've started at a very like late age. I'm sorry,
mm.
let me know if this is like going
Oh
too.
no, please. Well, I actually, I please continue because I have, yeah, no, this is not for me. Well, I think one of the reasons what I'll share is why I love this conversation and having you to have this conversation with is because I do think that there is a level of I want people to be able to have conversations that are uncomfortable, whether it be about politics or whatever, and then things like poop and sex and masturbation, because there are a part of who we are as humans, you know what I mean? And no matter where you lie with religion and um, all of those things, I think that there's a level of knowing your own body, knowing your biology and what you like and dislike and stuff like that, and being able to talk about that, especially when it comes to relationships. And as a gay man, I have lots of female friends, so I know also that sometimes the conversations that we have um, with me and them are sometimes conversations that they wouldn't necessarily have with other people. And I'm like, why? It's like we all do these things. We've all heard. We're here because somebody had sex. You know. You know.
Yeah, I love that. Like, let's just normalize it, normalize
Oh
talking
yeah,
about it. And
completely.
yeah, I was just saying that because I think that was a big reason why I wanted to bring this to other women, because they are so uncomfortable in their bodies and not in touch with their bodies and their sexualities. And I think that that was just really important in allowing me to be comfortable and confident in mine. And then I'd also, what kind of gave me even more confidence than all of this was during my first year of business, when I was kind of exploring my sexuality in new ways that I hadn't previously. When it came to like some group stuff, or I was doing a Tantra training. And
What is that?
Tantra it's like a spiritual practice. It's not necessarily just about sex, but it involves simple practices like eye gazing or connecting. It's really about union within yourself and with partners. So
Okay.
it was like, yeah, a different kind of sexual experience and training than I'd ever been exposed to. So there are different experiences that I was having within training and within certain partnerships that I was exploring that really were freeing and made me feel alive, and really made me realize the power of our sexuality in a way that I hadn't realized before. And I was like, wow, I want other people to feel this, and I want other people to understand that we can't really be our most powerful and our most confident if we suppress our sexuality, and if we really don't get in touch with it and release our shame around it and explore our turn-ons and all of that. So that was kind of like the missing piece, and the confidence for me to finally like put it into work and into action in my coaching business. So like there are people who think it's more about like, oh, you need a different sexual partner, or like it's about orgasm, or more of the technical stuff rather than doing like the deep inner work. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I got exactly. I was like, how would you express to somebody that it is about doing just deep inner work and exploring different parts of yourself? Because I'm a believer that sexuality is a part of who we are. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be the most important part or whatever the case may be, but I'm a believer in letting all parts of yourself be the most authentic there is. And so I just know some people that aren't that way. How do we get them there?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Because I get used to working with a certain type of person who already has that awareness, like
That makes
self-aware,
sense.
and like they
Yeah.
meet them at that place
Yeah.
most of the time. But I think I would just try to explain about our conditioning, and how if we really don't do this work, we can't possibly, like, we're basically running on autopilot, and we're
For
doing what we've
sure.
been conditioned and what we've been told. So how can you really know what you really want and what is really you, rather than just going through the motions of what you've been taught?
Mm, I love it. So, what tools would you say are supportive for women in kind of letting go some of those stigmas, or just kind of getting out of some of that conditioning?
um, some simple tools and tips that I often give are, especially to release shame and insecurity around sexuality and or our body, is, we're all spending time on social media like all day. We might as well use it to our advantage, and try to normalize these things, and like retrain our brain to understanding that sex is healthy and natural, and masturbation is, and that our bodies all look different ways, and no one is better than the other. So following like sex positive accounts that help normalize the messaging and normalize
Mm,
all bodies, um, being able to talk about sex more is huge, and it can be really difficult for people. Like, I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and told me that even just like on our 15-20 minute clarity call, they feel such a weight lifted off, simply because they weren't holding that like burden anymore. Like,
yeah.
because when we hide in shame, that just fuels the shame. And so
Yeah.
many people don't have a space to talk about these things, because it is so taboo. So I think it's so important to find either a trusted friend or a professional who you feel safe with, who won't judge you, that you can just express freely. And like, you quickly realize that that shame just like starts to shed because you're
Mm,
no longer carrying it, you're no longer hiding.
yeah.
Um, I think it's also important to find where you're at on your journey and see what is like the next smallest doable step that you can take.
Mm,
Um, so for instance, if someone is insecure around their body and masturbation and carries a lot of shame around it, how can you start exploring your body in a non-sexual way, or like when you're fully clothed, or can you start spending some more time naked and just like improving your relationship with your body before even going to your genitals or anything. So small doable steps toward your goal, not like overwhelming yourself or feeling like you have to erase all your conditioning like
yeah.
immediately, is really important. um and then lastly, I'll say like it is important to understand that sometimes how we are outside of the bedroom is like a mirror to how we are inside the bedroom. And if we understand that, then we can start to make changes outside of the bedroom that will then make changes inside the bedroom. And I know that might be
Mm,
hard to follow, but as an example, something that's really common that women come to me with, a lot of women feel um, like they have trouble receiving compliments, or they have trouble asking for help. And then
mm,
often it's likely that those people inside the bedroom have trouble um, receiving like oral sex, or feel like they don't want
mm.
that attention, or feel like they're taking too long to orgasm, or they feel like they always have to be pleasing their partners instead of receiving. So a way to kind of work with this is, how outside of the bedroom can you maybe start asking for help more, or like, can you even just ask one person who you know loves you, that you like, it will be like less likely that they'll reject you,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
ask for help. Or next time you're complimented, how can you work on not turning it down, and like not putting yourself
Yeah.
down and saying thank you. So things like that.
I'm like, this also applies to like men too, or other people, other way people identify as well. I'm like, okay, okay. Like for me as a male, and in the gay world as well, like I feel like masturbation and sex is very okay to talk about, if you will.
Yeah.
In my experience, it's not so much the same for women. Why do you think that is?
I think it has a lot to do with just how we're conditioned, like the messages that were sent as children. um, because just in our society, it has just become so normal for boys to explore their body. um, and you'll hear a lot of stories, if you speak to women who are open to talk about it, of women who have maybe tried as a child, just like naturally exploring their body, we're like, but we got shut down. Like we're like, nope, we don't do that. Or like, and that's a result of just like generation to generation of people being so uncomfortable around sexuality, and just like constantly suppressing it for like the next generations too. And um, but it's all, it's in the media too, it's all over. We're sent messages where it's not okay for us, like it's more of a male thing, and that really affects us.
Completely. It reminds me on a very like comical level, like of the whole when Cardi B and WAP came out and how scandalous that was. And I'm like, I hear this stuff in hip hop all the time. And for me, it stands out too, because like I'm a gay man, so I'm not listening to this for all the strippers and all the stuff that they're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you guys literally talk about the same thing, just a different, like just different genitalia.
Yeah, yeah.
Gee. And what this is funny because we kind of talked about this. What would you say are some common no-nos that you should that maybe women or listeners should stay away from in while like exploring sexuality, or just going through this journey on themselves?
Yeah, so we definitely touched on some of it, and like you, I'm all about like being your most authentic all around. So that's especially important for your sexuality. Like no faking anything or trying to put on a show. Like the more you can be, the better, because you're going to be more relaxed in your body. You're going to be more open to pleasure. You're going to be more fulfilled. You're going to attract better partners for you that will allow you to like feel more free and like really drop into your sexuality more and enjoy it more. So things like even as small as like don't moan if you're not actually feeling pleasure. Like just like don't just try to put on a show like and make it seem like you're having a good time if you're not. Don't do certain positions like if they're uncomfortable or if you don't want to, if it's not pleasurable for you. Um, don't, this is important, especially don't keep going if you're tired, if it hurts, or if you're just not into it. You're allowed to stop, you're allowed to take breaks. You don't owe anyone anything. Like honor your body, that's most important. um don't pressure yourself to orgasm is another big one, because that usually works against people, and it also just stops them from having the pleasure that they actually want. Like there's so much more pleasure to be had in connecting with other people and connecting with yourself, if you're not just like obsessed with having an orgasm. Unfortunately, in our society, like we're obsessed with the orgasm, which like I get it, it feels good, but like
Yeah.
there are other things that can feel good. So
Oh, okay. Okay.
um yeah, and let's see, I think it's also important to kind of going along with that last one, to explore your whole body and not just your genitals. Like don't just think that that's the only place that you can have pleasure and explore your sexuality. Like there's pleasure all over our body.
I love it. Yes. um, are there any like particular toys or tools that you recommend?
You probably won't love this answer, and a lot of people might not love this answer, but I really think it's about like being open to what kind of sparks your interest, or like what kind of like pleasure everyone's searching for, because it's different. um I use like fairly basic vibrators, I kind of always have. And I think again it's like it's where everyone's at on their journey, like what they're comfortable with, what they want to explore. Some are more basic, some are more advanced. I also
Some are definitely more advanced. I've seen some stuff. I'm like, oh.
yeah. I will say though that up until this year I hadn't tried a suction vibrator, and so it's like a different kind of vibrator.
A
I
suction
will say I'll
vibrator.
recommend that one as like as just like a clitoral one to try. I think anyone can enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's it's a suction, so I guess is it more on so it's on the outside then? Use it
It
more on
is
the outside.
external. It's external,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, it's just like it vibrates, but it's also like sucking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get what
but
suction means.
but in a
Yeah.
different way. Like it kind of feels like, yeah, it's just like light air, but it's just a unique feeling than like the norm, like a typical vibrator that just vibrates. I don't know why, but it's like subtle, but also not. The best I could do to
Okay.
explain that. I'm just
We
saying,
love subtle, but
have a
not.
click, get some suction in there.
Got it. Got it. Does your coaching or support change based on like if the woman or female is in um a relationship versus out of a relationship? Because I'm assuming like if you're not seeking out a partner, it might be different with already exploring with a partner you trust and comfortable with or working towards that, I guess.
Yeah, every woman I work with is different, and everyone is in different kind of relationships too. Like some people are in open relationships or they're seeking to open their relationship, so I'll
Oh,
help guide them
wow.
through that. Some are single and just like want to focus on their own relationship with their body, and some are exploring their sexuality with other people. So again, I just meet them where they're at and see what their goals are, what they're trying to seek, and then we kind of put together a plan and see how it feels along the way.
Yeah. Open relationships are really big these days, I feel like.
They are, yeah.
Would you like
And
to comment?
you're getting at that. So, um, look, I think it's great that more people are feeling free to explore relationships and relating in ways that weren't always acceptable or as acceptable. So I think that's positive. I think that it can be very hard, but so it can monogamy. Um, and yeah, in general, if anyone feels called to explore, and especially something that's more taboo, like an open relationship or non-monogamy, then I'm all for that. And I think it's great to like follow your curiosity.
Yeah, I love that. So how did we meet? Because we met in a groundlings class. Talk a little bit about that. Because improv and your work, I would assume, I guess maybe does go hand in hand, but
What about those times that we were shut down for talking about sexual?
I know it's so interesting because like, so I get from a teaching standpoint, like, I don't know, it's so interesting because like I'm a very open, like there's almost no topic that I wouldn't dive into, or at least like, hey, I don't know, but I'll listen, you know? Um, but yeah, he definitely didn't want to talk about dildos and stuff.
It's disappointing, I'll be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to be like that nerd, like you were being sex negative right now.
Right? Yeah.
But like, I get it. We're all at different points on our journey.
Exactly.
But,
I'm the same way. I was the same. I was like, oh man, come on. This is 2021. What
I
do you
honestly,
think people been doing this whole pandemic?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's more I can say. We'll talk
Yeah,
privately.
yeah, yeah.
But
It was a great class, though. Let's just say that. It was a
it really
phenomenal.
was.
It was. It really was. It was a great.
I know I loved it, and I really like would love him as a teacher again too. But
Exactly. Anywho.
anyway, to answer your question, in many ways, improv is actually really important and can be helpful with our sexuality and with becoming more embodied in our bodies, which is really important to for our pleasure. And so I actually um, use I used our improv class kind of as inspiration for revamping my Play Over Perfection workshop, which is a workshop to help women get out of their heads and into their bodies. Like,
Oh,
typical
awesome.
for women who consider themselves like people pleasers or overthinkers or perfectionists. And it's also an opportunity to help people prioritize play and pleasure, because
Mm,
it's hard as adults to like think that that's important,
it
and
is.
it's actually really healing. And so um I know this wasn't necessarily what you're getting at by asking me this question, but that improv is a great exercise that can help with our sexuality, that you
Yeah.
wouldn't like, put the two and two together, but it's really great for you to get out of your head and just like be okay with the unknown and get in your body and like be okay with like looking stupid or getting things wrong or not knowing what you're doing. All really important things. But I was taking improv. Just watching you makes me laugh, like, really, like in the best way. In the best um, I throughout my own healing journey, I'm on this, never ending journey, as I think we all are, of like becoming our fullest selves and being fully
Completely.
expressed and feeling alive and free. And along the way, I realized that I I'm meant to do other things in life too, and in order to express myself and be free in that. And I realized I didn't want to only help people realize their dreams. I wanted to, fulfill mine too, and finally feel good enough to do that. So I am now getting training and on the journey to expressing myself through comedy and acting and voiceover and singing and dancing and all the things. Entertainment.
I love it.
That is what feels really good to me, in addition to doing this work that I do in my business. And I would love to, I'm still on the same mission, just maybe a different medium, and, like spreading messages in new ways than I have before. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I love
that's
that.
why we met.
Yes. And I love that because it shows too that there doesn't have to be a definite like end to anybody's journey. I just think when I was growing up, I always thought like, okay, I was going to be an accountant. I was going to do this and I was going to do that. And that was just like how life had to go. And, there's such a beauty in just going with the flow and discovering like, oh, this is a new love of mine. So I'm going to kind of explore that. Oh, this is a new love. And I do think that there's sometimes an idea of like, you only have to do one thing in this life. And it's like, that's not necessarily true. Why stifle yourself? Why limit yourself? And I really love that journey for you. And I'm glad we met.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, so for any of my listeners who have female partners, what words of advice or tools could you give them to support their partners?
I love that question.
I knew I threw a curveball at you,
Yeah,
huh?
I love. It just takes me some time to process.
No, you're good.
Um, it's really important for anyone to feel safe to express and to feel safe physically and emotionally. And so I think um, to be open to asking, what do you need? How can I support you? Because everyone needs different kind of support. So there's not one answer that I can give you, but it's more of like, be open to talking about these things and asking like, what do you need? And like, I want to support you in this. I want to work as a team with you. Like, how can we go about this? Yeah.
I love that. Before we go, I would love to hear, did you prepare a cold diamond moment? Did you get your homework assignment?
Sure did.
OMG.
Breakups in general have always been like the most painful experiences for me. I really feel like my deepest wounds are my attachment wounds that are triggered in relationship. So the detachment process and like the grief and loss that comes with that have always been like super deeply painful, um, and have been always a call um, to go deeper within myself and like find like wholeness within myself. So I'm so grateful for those experiences, and they've all helped me along my journey to where I am now, and being able to, feel enough to um, pursue my passions and to not feel like I need a partner in order to have a fulfilling life, those sort of things. And, these are things that I preach in my messages as well too. I just want people to feel fulfilled and alive, and you don't need anyone outside of you for that. So
Mm.
those were definitely meaningful in my life. I'd say those were the biggest ones. In general, things I've shared of just about how my expression was stifled. They weren't like one moment. It was kind of like a slow burn over my lifetime. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, of just being stifled and realizing over time like how that's affected me and um, impacted my life and my relationships. And that all affected, my healing journey as well, and why I do what I do. So
I love that. And that kind of, I think you're sharing a little bit about it, but we ask every guest at the end of the episode, we've all heard the quote, be the change you wish to see. What's the change you wish to see, Christie, and how are you going to be it?
I love that. I love that you ask everyone that. I wish for a world where everyone is safe and free and celebrated and loved for exactly who they are. And I really believe in the ripple effects of doing our own individual work and healing, and in order to better handle our emotions and hold space for other people, in order to be more compassionate and empathetic, and in order to have the energy to do the activism and the work, the bigger work that we want to see, to hold space for people and put together movements to really make big change in the world. So in order to do that, I'm dedicated to my own healing and being the best that I can be to support people in my business and the people that I love in the world and know and face to face, like through social media and any community that I'm in. And I'm also really dedicated to doing my best to continue to learn how to better serve Black women and people of color and people in marginalized communities, because I understand that they do face more challenges to the freedom that I want for everyone. So that's important.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I appreciate you for being on this episode.